So this is the title that that I had proposed, engaging meaningfully the troubled times. It's the troubled times and the troubling ages, right? So I thought I'll rather, though it's a very broad topic, I'll use certain biblical principles from the Word of God, which is quite relevant in our situations today. How do I engage meaningfully as a parent? I was told that this class needs to be addressed to the parents who have children, who have teens. So this has been organized by the Couples Fellowship, Young Families Fellowship. They said they needed this to be addressed to parents who have children and teens children. So just addressing. So looking at that perspective, I put this title as Engaging Meaningfully the Troubled Times and the Troubled Ages. The portion for today's meditation and study is from Luke chapter 2, verses 41 to 52, right? And this is the only portion in the Bible which mentions the life of Joseph, Mary, and Jesus Christ. How did Jesus Christ grow in his home? How was he nurtured? What were some of the responses that this boy Jesus gave to his parents? How did the parents nurture him? What are some of the mistakes? Not, I wouldn't say mistakes. Some of the things that Jesus did as a youngster, as a child. These are things that we are going to have a look at the story of Joseph, Mary, and Jesus Christ from Luke chapter 2, verses 41 to 52. I'm sure you all are very familiar with this passage of Luke chapter 2, verses 41 to 52. It's basically talking about Jesus and his parents going to temple. And as they go to the temple, they worship the Lord. But as they come back home, Joseph and Mary thinks that Jesus is with them. But after a few days' journey, they realize Jesus is not with them. And they come back and see Jesus Christ in the temple talking with the teachers of the law. And then Mother Mary is very upset at Jesus Christ, and she confronts Jesus Christ as to why he did this to them. But he gives his mother a very appropriate response, like telling the mother, "Don't you know that I should be in my father's house?" And then finally, the portion ends whereby the word of God says that Jesus grew in wisdom and in stature and in likeness to God and to men. That's how the whole portion finishes. And I'm sure everybody who are listening to me are very familiar with this biblical portion. And from that biblical portion, I'm going to uh, uh, talk about how to engage meaningfully the troubled times, the troubled ages, right? Especially in the family. So I have titled The Essentials in the Family. So if we need to engage our kids meaningfully in troubled times and in troubled ages, the family needs to have some essentials, There are 6 essential things that I'm going to talk to you in my limited time, and we shall close with that, right? Now, what are those essentials in the family? Number one, which I would say is rituals in the family. Luke chapter 2, verse 41 says, as it was in the custom, Jesus went with his father and mother to the temple in Jerusalem, right? It talks about a Jewish family. A Jewish family was very much upright, and Jewish family was very strict in the way they worshipped the Lord, and they went to the temple. So one of the things which I would normally say today is that if we need to engage the troubled times in this and the troubled ages, the first thing that has to be there, which is essential in the family, is rituals in the family. Are there rituals in the family? Now, when I talk about rituals, there are a lot of people, some people misinterpret this as doing something that has no meaning. Life is made meaningful when we have meaningful rituals. Life is made meaningful when we engage in meaningful rituals. And I believe even in our spirituality, in our worship, in our prayer meetings and everything, when we have certain rituals, right? The worship part, the prayer meetings, everything becomes more and more significant. Now, what are the rituals in the family? I would say gathering together as a worshiping community in home and in church. So I've used this word that we need to gather together not only as a worshiping community in the church, but also at home. And this is an essential that in the family. In a Jewish family, it was very normal for a father and mother and the child and also the neighbor to go together to the temple to worship. And it was a huge affair where the extended family would go together. It was very appropriate for them. It was quite natural for them to move together as a family. And I believe in today's world, what strengthens a family is when the family makes a conscious decision that we are going to worship both in the church and in home, right? Both in the church and in home. In a place like Bangalore, right? Especially, I'm not very sure. I understand Kerpuram is more of a homogeneous crowd, which means people are connected little more better those quarters. I have very faint memories of Kerpuram Church way back in '94, right? I think it's about 26 years back. I'm sure Kerpuram Church is quite different. I have only the experience of the Kerpuram Church of 26 years back. Those days, I felt everybody was connected with each other, everybody was close together, and the radius was hardly about 5 to 6 kilometers. But I think over the years, the members have all scattered, not like the Primrose Church where you have members from scattering all over Bangalore. But I think Kerpuram is more of a homogeneous crowd, more attached, more connected, and I believe more intimate in relationships too. Hence, I believe the church worship would be very meaningful. So I believe it's imperative that every family is in the Kerpuram church, right? The family. Now, I'm not talking about the father and the mother. Consciously make a deliberate attempt to be part of the worshiping community. Now, one of the things that I've noticed sometimes in the church is that the parents are part of the worshiping community, but the kids are left behind. Kids are left behind. Just one simple question to all of you, right? Does the parents make a conscious effort to see that the children are there inside the church? Number one. Number two, if the kids are inside the church, does the parent make an effort to see whether the kids actively participate in the worship service of the church? പള്ളിയിൽ വരും പള്ളിയിൽ വരും പക്ഷേ in many churches, since I travel, I find kids outside, not inside. The parents are all inside, but most of the next generation kids, the youngsters, the teens, right, they are outside the church. It's high time, I believe, right? It's high time that the church, the parish, takes a conscious effort to be inclusive. Now, what do you mean by inclusive? Inclusive in a sense, the church has to be handed over to the next generation of children. The children are the prime participants in worship. I think Nainu Achan knows that the senior members will not leave the church. പോകത്തില്ല അറിയാം. മലയാളത്തിൽ പറയും തല്ലിക്കൊന്നാലും മാർത്തമാ സഭ വിടത്തില്ല. But I doubt the next generation kids whether they will stay in the church or not. I doubt, because they're not part of the worshiping community. Look at most of the churches in Bangalore. At least few I have experienced where kids are not part of the worship service. Kids are not part of the, they are in the church, but they are not an active participant. That's why I just asked these two questions. If you are participating in the church worship, is your kid inside the church? Number one. Number two, if the kids are inside the church, are they mute spectators, or are they active participants? Are they active participants? Please take caution. Be cautious. The more you make your kids active in church activities, participate in the worship activities, that makes them love their parish, love the church. get them to church, bring them to church, and involve them in church activities. That is how we can help them to channelize their thinking into something concrete in a more spiritual manner. And along with the church, I believe worshiping at home, a very simple exercise. We all have a family prayer in the evening or in the morning. And that's also something that has to be taken very seriously. അവിടെയും ഞാൻ പറയും പലപ്പോഴും കാണുന്നത് it is the parents who decides a song, it is the parents who reads the Bible portion, it is one of the parents who prays. On the contrary, allow the children to take leadership in the prayer meeting in your home, or in other sense, family prayer. Let the children decide on the song. Let the children decide on how the family prayer has to function in the precincts of the home. See, when that happens, the children feels good that I'm involved in the activities of the family, especially in the spiritual nurturing activities. So I think this is something that we need to consciously do, because as I said earlier, as parents, we love the church, we love the Marthama church. We wouldn't want to leave the church. But as I said, I am not sure as to how the next generation will deal with the Marthama church. What would be their relationship with the Marthama church if they are not founded on strong spiritual foundation? And that strong spiritual foundation comes when they become part of the community of believers in the church through the worshiping community. They become participants in the worshiping community. They become part of the parish and also part of the family prayer at home. That's number one, gathering together as a worshiping community, both in home and in church. Number two, gathering together in the Lord's table and the dining table. I've used two analogies. What is the relationship between the dining table and the Lord's table? I think both are fellowships. Both are fellowships. Lord's table, you enjoy the fellowship with the Lord, breaking of the bread, right? And we all share that meal in common. And the same thing happens in the dining table, sharing the meals in common. But some of the families, I believe, dining table is a place where it is a place of discontent, is a place of argument, is a place where there is no fellowship, where there is no sharing, where there is no sharing. In നമ്മുടെ ചില പിള്ളേർ വളരെ spoiled. You look at the dining table, like in the ratri, when you serve the what do you call as the dishes in the table, you will find, right? If you ചില പിള്ളേർക്ക് when mother prepares a particular curry, he will say, "Ide all only this? You prepared more for me, and I don't like, you know that, right?" So the mother is very conscious. She has to prepare one particular dishes according to the likes of her elder son, and then the mother has to prepare another set of dishes for the younger son because he doesn't eat certain things that the elder. When a papa has got diabetes, blood pressure, and all that, so he has to have another separate diet. And then mommy is left all alone. She eats whatever is left out, what the son and the father has eaten. You know, she feels, I don't want to waste anything in the dining table, so I'll rather, wrap it up, just like the disciples gathered up all the leftovers in John chapter 6 when they were feeding the 5,000, right? Dining table, I believe, is a place of fellowship where everybody comes together, eats together, and shares together, right? And somehow that's missing today, because I believe that's also another feature which I have found in most of the families where people eat together, but it is in front of that idiot box. Most of the people have their dinner in front of the idiot box, 52-inch idiot box, 63-inch idiot box, and they all sit together like dumb kids. And no wonder TV is called as an idiot box, because you come in front of the television and look at the people who are watching the TV. They can be described by just that word, idiots. No, I mean, just showing certain emotion doesn't talk anything. See, just check your children when they eat. Do they talk? If they are in front of TV, they will not talk. They will only talk in monosyllables. You ask, the mother will ask, "Mane, chor vena, Right? Do you need curry? They wouldn't talk. Basically because they're so glued to that idiot box. So I believe, having Meals fellowship is a divine fellowship because you are actually part of that divine meal, not just in church, but also in home. So I believe consciously make an attempt in our homes that we're going to have dinner together with that idiot box switched off, and everybody comes together and sharing certain meals in common. Not, I mean, not each one having their own taste and fancy, where the mother and the family has to take effort to satisfy everyone. So I believe that's number two. So you gather together at the Lord's table and the church, and you gather together in the dining table at home. And number three, I believe it is only when we gather together in the dining table and we start talking, we start communicating. And one of the most beautiful rituals that a family can have is when everybody could communicate to each other on a very nice way. And if I need to communicate nicely, effectively, and meaningfully in the family, there are four things that I have shown. Four things. Number one, listen. Number two, understand. Number three, respect. And number four, the freedom to share opinion. When a child talks to you, listen, 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 listen. The Malayalis have a dialogue, right? The moment the child talks, the father normally says, "Nee manasil കാണുന്നത് ഞാൻ മാനത്ത് കാണും. നീ ഇനി കൂടുതൽ പറയണ്ട. എനിക്ക് മനസ്സിലായി." You know, kids or children are often snubbed. They just want to talk certain, maybe irrational things, maybe certain things that are not relevant, right? But can we have the patience to listen? Number two, as we listen to them, can we also try to understand their perspective? Understand their perspective. Many of the parents fail to understand the perspective of what children are trying to communicate. Can I understand the perspective from which my child is speaking to me? Right? Try to do that. Number three, respect. He may be talking certain things which is contradictory to what I believe. My child will be talking, sometimes it would be quite nonsense. It would be quite stupid according to us. Right? But yet I would be, don't be judgmental. Respect, right? If you do not like what your kid is trying to tell you, confront him. But when you're doing a confrontation, please do not belittle him, his identity, his character. Respect and tell him in an assertive manner, this is what we feel. This is what we think. This is what we think. Right? I understand what you are trying to say, but this is what we think. So respecting the views that are being expressed by our children in the family has to be taken seriously. And number four, kids also have the right, the freedom to share their opinion. They also have the right to share their opinion. Am I in a family where my parents have the patience to listen to me? Am I in a family where the parents give me the freedom to tell my opinions without any doubt or without any fear? So I believe that's something that we need to consciously understand and do. So these are number one, rituals in the family, gathering together as worshiping community, both in home and the church. Number two, gathering together in the Lord's table and the dining table. And number three, home, a place where all of us, every member of the family, communicate better in a very meaningful way. And for that, please try to listen first, understand the other person's perspective, even if you differ from his opinion, respect that person, respect your children, and finally give him the freedom to share his opinion. That's number one. Number two is being part of the life experience of the children. Now, in this story of Jesus, what happens is the mother and father goes to the temple, and after some times they are walking back. Mother Mary thinks that Jesus is maybe with the father Joseph. And Joseph also, like a typical father, thinks that my son would be with Mary. But as they walk early, walk forward, and after it's only quite late that they understand that their son is not with them. They have left behind. They have left behind and they don't know where their son is. Now, this is something that happens in most of the family, and I have interpreted that leaving of Jesus Christ in the temple as being part of the life experience of the children. Right? Am I part of the life experience of my child? Do you know the world of your child? Do you know the world of your child? Right? Recently, there was a very funny video where a father was asked, who are your children's close friends? He doesn't know. Name of the class teacher doesn't know. Right? Which are the subjects that he scores exceedingly well? Doesn't know. Right? Simple. You ask yourself. If I ask the same question to you, who are your child's best friends? Where do they live? Right? And who are his teachers? Right? What are some of the problems that he faces? That's the second question I'm asking. Right? So the world of the child is united with my world, right? So if I need to deal with today's troubled ages, the children, it's important that I get into his world, not bringing them to my world. I think in Bangalore, later, Dr. Casey Abraham, I'm sure you might know him. He was a former director of ECC. He had his wife and his son now runs an organization in Bangalore with mentally challenged children. They have an organization basically because I think later Dr. Casey Abraham Achin has a daughter who's mentally challenged, right? And one of his books, I think I have read it. It was a devotion on the cross. He writes a very beautiful, a poignant story of how, in the beginning, he would always wanted his daughter to be part of his world. So he would always consciously bring her to the outside world, right, and make her to interact with certain people. But what happened? Dr. K.C. Abramachan was saying that she would actually squirm and get away from the people and go to her room. And Achan was a little upset at the way she behaved. But later, what happened was, Achan wrote in his book, rather than me bringing her to my world, both me and my wife decided to do one thing. We started entering into the world of our child. We started understanding her world in her terms, her pains, her challenges. It's a very beautiful, poignant story that late K.C. Brahmachan had shared in this book. It's a very old book, and I felt that was a beautiful reminder for us as parents. Most of us try to bring our children into our world. Don't bring the children into your world. Can I go into their world? When I become a part and parcel of their world, that is when the children understand my dad and mom understands me, right? My dad and my mom understands me. Can I go into their world? And hence I've asked this question. Do you understand the stress and the problems he or she faces? The amount of stress today that children face in terms of academics, in terms of competition, in terms of understanding who they are, their identity. They need help. They need help, right? The amount of bullying that sometimes happens in school, the sexual abuse that is happening to a girl child in the outside world, right? It's enormous. The kind of problems that our children are going through are really enormous, enormous. But what I'm trying to say is that, do you understand what they are going through? If we need to understand what our children are going through, we need to be part of their life experience. We need to enter into their world. And when you enter into their world, that is when I've asked the third question. Can your children share the problems with you? Have you given the freedom to share? Will my dad and mom understand what I'm going through? Or if I share a problem with my parents, right, will they belittle me? Will they criticize me? Sometimes I've worked with sexually abused young children who have been brought by parents because they were not good in academics, right? The children are being brought basically because they're not good in academics. But as I deal with children, I realize that at some point of their school life, there has been an abuse taking place. So I sometimes ask, why didn't you tell this to your mother? No, she wouldn't understand. And there have been cases when the kids have told, I have told my mother, but then she just blames me. It is because the way you have been dealing or the way you are looking, right? And the kid has stopped sharing her problem with her own folks at home. So that's why I said, see, get into the world of a child rather than bringing the child into our world. Understand what is the stress and the problem he or she faces. Give him or her the freedom to share and tell them. Give them the confidentiality and the trust by saying, Monet, whatever happens to you, please tell us. We will be there with you. These are things that a children would love to hear from their parents. We will be there with you. Whatever happens to you, share it with us. Tell us. We will stand by you. See, അങ്ങനെ ഒരു വാക്ക് കേൾക്കുമ്പോഴത്തേക്ക് the children feel so good that there is somebody who's understanding, right? Who's understanding, and this is something I believe something that is beautiful that we need to be doing. Let's get into the world of our children. Let's understand the stress that the problem that he or she faces, right? Let us give the children the freedom to share with us openly anything that is there in their mind. So, this is number two, being part of the life experience of the children. Three, helping your children to be connected to good models. Now, how did I come about with this point? Is that Mary and Joseph are both upset. Because they have to walk back, right? They actually walked a long way forward to their home, but now they have to walk back, and they're really very upset, right? Joseph is upset with Mary. Mary may be upset with Joseph, and they come to the church and not understanding where the son would be, and suddenly they find their son sitting with the teachers of the law, and it is beautifully written in the Word of God, sitting with them, listening to them, and asking them questions. This is what Jesus is doing in the temple. He's sitting with the teachers of the law, connecting with them. I use that word, connecting with them, listening to them, right? Raising questions, and also sitting underneath their feet. Now, this is a very good model for us as parents. Helping your children to be connected to good models. What the kids today needs are good models. So I would ask this question: whom does your children connect to? Right? ഇപ്പോഴത്തെ മുഴുവൻ connection is with the mobile phones, right? All connection is with mobile phones, with all those games, right? With all those internet games. And all those things are something that actually influences them, right? That is where I believe the relevance of a Sunday school, the relevance of youth fellowship, the relevance of good family friends, right? Whom does your children connect to? Ask them. Two, from where does he get his values? Here, Jesus Christ is talking with the teachers of the law, right? Listening to them, asking questions and understanding. Now, this is a learning process. Now, from where does he gets values? And I believe we all are living in a very complicated, tough world. Our children spend almost 12 hours outside the home. Just imagine early morning, they go by around 8 to school. Now, last year it was not there. But the majority of children, they spend their major time in school. And who are the people who influence them? Their peers, their contemporaries. People from different faith, different religion, no faith, materialistic, right? Pleasure oriented, passion, right? And these are the people who influence them in terms of values. And hence, I would say, is our home the place of value sharing? Is our home a place where we teach our children values? We need to really teach our children values. How do we teach our children values? And these are things that we incorporate when we grow up. Chile thought a certain see when I told about the meals at the dining table. I think it's very important that it is in the context of a meal that we share. We teach a lot of value. I use a very simple example. I grew up in Bombay, right? And as a kid, when we used to have dinner, One of our favorite things was the pomfret fish that would my mom would give us as dinner. We were four of us, right? And if you have eaten pomfret, that is avoli, right? The major piece, which is a beautiful the trunk part of it, was given to both of us. I had my brother too. ഇത് രണ്ടും ഞങ്ങൾക്ക് തരും. The major chunk portion of the pomfret, and the tail would go to my mother and father. നാലെണ്ണമേ വെച്ചിട്ടുള്ളൂ in front of the dining table. So when my mother keeps four fried pomfret pieces, the understanding is that as one child, I have the right to only one piece of fish. അപ്പോൾ അന്നത്തെ കാലത്ത് ഞാൻ എപ്പോഴും ഓർക്കുന്നുണ്ട്, എന്റെ ഫിഷ് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ആ പോംഫ്രെറ്റ് വളരെ ടേസ്റ്റി ആയതുകൊണ്ട് ഈ പല കുട്ടികൾ ചെയ്യുന്ന പോലെ ചോറ് അവിടെ കാണും, ഈ മീനും ഇറച്ചിയും തിന്നും. അത് തിന്ന് കഴിയുമ്പോഴത്തേക്ക് suddenly our eyes falls on that leftover piece which is meant for my mother, because she maybe does something in the kitchen and she is often very late to have dinner with us. So three of us, dad, me and my brother, we would be having dinner. അപ്പോൾ ഒറ്റ പീസ് നടക്കുന്ന സമയത്ത് I remember many times I've asked my mother, Amma, do you need this fish? Because it's so tempting, right? You don't have a fish in your plate and there's a fish outside, a fried fish, which is so tempting. അപ്പോൾ ഞാൻ പലപ്പോഴും മമ്മിയോട് ചോദിച്ചിട്ടുണ്ട്, അമ്മ ഞാൻ ആ ഫിഷ് എടുക്കട്ടെ, with the understanding that all mothers are very unselfish, right? Very sacrificing. പക്ഷെ എന്റെ വീട്ടിൽ എന്റെ അമ്മ പറഞ്ഞിട്ടുണ്ട്, എടുക്കണ്ട, you have no right. That is mine. You have been given only one. അമ്മക്ക് എനിക്ക് ഭയങ്കര വേദന തോന്നിയിട്ടുണ്ട്. How come mothers are like this? But she taught me a lesson. She used to later, when she comes, she used to always understand, when there are four people there, all the four have a right, equal right as to what has to be served. ഇന്നത്തെ കാലത്ത് നിങ്ങളുടെ വീട്ടിൽ ഇത് തന്നെ സംഭവിച്ചെന്ന് ഓർക്കും. 4 മീൻ കഷ്ണങ്ങൾ, വറുത്ത മീൻ കഷ്ണങ്ങൾ പോംഫ്രെറ്റ് എടുത്ത് വെച്ചിട്ട് ആ 2 പിള്ളേരെ മാത്രം ഒന്ന് കഴിക്കാനിരുന്നാൽ, do you think they will leave that 2 fish behind for the father and mother? കാണത്തില്ല കേട്ടോ. ആദ്യം ഇരിക്കുന്ന ഇളയതാണോ മൂത്തതാണോ അവൻ 4ഉം അടിച്ചു മാറ്റും. And he will say, the rest is there in the refrigerator, tell mother to fry it again. I've taken my share. Very simple thing, very simple thing. So I believe it's very important to understand, we help our children connect to good models, Sunday school teachers, good friends, good community of believers. Ask the question, is he just obsessed with his mobile phones, obsessed with all those gamings, and obsessed with all those value systems that he gets through certain social media network? From where does he get values? And is your home a place where values are shared? Think about it. That's the third one. Number 4 is making your children independent and responsible. So Mary is very upset. She confronts Jesus Christ and says, Mone, nee endinada ingane cheyide? In very simple Malayalam words, son, why did you do this to me? Or why did you do this to us? And Jesus Christ makes an affirmative, gives an affirmative reply, right? A little confrontation, but he gives a very assertive reply. And what is his reply? Mom, don't you know that I should be in my father's house? ഞാൻ എൻ്റെ പിതാവിന്റെ ഭവനത്തിൽ ഇരിക്കേണ്ടതല്ലയോ? This is a question that Jesus Christ is saying. So when he's actually saying that, I believe what Christ is, I assume, my presumption is that he's telling, Amma, can you just leave me alone? I want to be independent. I want to be responsible. Don't be after me in such a way. And this is something that today's parents need to teach our children. Needs to teach our children. Making your children independent and responsible is responsibility entrusted to your children. Think about it. രാവിലെ ഉച്ചയ്ക്ക് വൈകിട്ട് കഴിക്കാൻ വരുന്ന സമയത്ത്, who brings the plates? Who serves the breakfast, lunch and dinner? Right? Who cleans the plates? Right? Who sets the table? ഒന്ന് ചിന്തിച്ചേ. The children are normally not involved. Make them involved. Make them involved. And once they finish the dinner, ask them to clean the plates. Right? Who washes their clothes? I'm sure it's washing machine. But who tidies it? Who keeps it in the cupboard? Who irons it? Adellam Amma, Amma. And somehow today the children are so dependent on parents that for even silly things they just shout at mom. And during school time, just imagine if it is the morning at 7:30, the child is supposed to go at 7:45. The hangama that is there in our homes. One child will be shouting, Amma, where's my socks? The other child will shout, Amma, I can't find my history book. The father will be shouting, where is the hot water that I asked you to keep it for my bath? It's a huge hangama in the house because everybody is dependent on this one lady of the house. I believe the children needs to be taught to be independent. And if they need to be independent, I believe they need to be entrusted with responsibilities. They need to be entrusted with responsibilities. Whatever be the age, give them some sense of responsibility. ഇങ്ങനെ ചെയ്താൽ മാത്രമേ ഞാൻ പറയത്തുള്ളൂ നാളെ നല്ല ഭർത്താവും നല്ല ഭാര്യയാകാം. I believe this is couples fellowship. Couples fellowship. All the wives look at your husbands, to some extent, if whatever goodness that has come to him is basically maybe he has been given some responsibility or independence. ഭർത്താവ് അല്പം ഉഴപ്പുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ അത് വീട്ടിലെ കൊച്ചിലെ തൊട്ടൊന്നും പഠിപ്പിച്ചിട്ടില്ല. That is a whole issue. The same thing happens vice versa, right? If the wife thinks that it is not possible, that certain things are not possible, it's the whole concept that I'm not willing to do anything. Oro prayatil, the kids need to be entrusted with responsibility, and that makes them independent. Second, especially a Malayali family, is that gender discrimination in the family. You have a girl child and a boy child. What type of chores would you give the boy child to do? What kind of chores will you give it to the girl child? Right? It's a huge discussion, right? Gender roles. I have now one of my student. I am a research guide to a Naga student who's actually writing a thesis on a study on socialization practices of parents in the Naga society in relation to how the children see their gender roles. അപ്പോൾ വീട്ടിൽ പേരൻസ് എങ്ങനെയുള്ള പിള്ളേർക്ക് എങ്ങനെയുള്ള ചുമതലകളാണ് കൊടുക്കുന്നത്, അതിൽ കൂടെ പിള്ളേര് എങ്ങനെയുള്ള ജെൻഡർ റോൾസ് ആണ് എടുക്കുന്നത്. This thesis is being done in a Naga society. A PhD thesis is being done. Whenever she comes to discuss her research work, I often think this research should also be done in a Marthoma community as to how sometimes gender discrimination takes place in the kitchen. Gender discrimination takes place in the home. And vice versa, today gender discrimination also happens in the church. Now there's a huge discussion in the church circle because two young ladies have been selected as a lay minister in two parishes in United States, and it has not been approved by the diocesan bishop. So there's a huge discussion going on in the church circle. A lot of people asking us questions. Why is the church so exclusive? Why are they, excluding young girls who would want to be part of the worshiping community as a lay minister? See, I think this starts with a family where there is a sense of gender discrimination. Think about it. And finally, have you taught your child to be independent so as to have healthy detachment from the family? Healthy detachment from the family. Young families fellowship, right? Think about your wife or think about your husband. Does he have a healthy detachment from his parents? Or is your wife all the time with the mobile phones talking to her mother? Or is your husband often connected with his parents that they control him? You live in Kiarpuram, but the string is in Malapalli, the string is in Kottarakara, the string is in Tiruvalla, or the string is in Kottayam, right? You're settled in Kiarpuram in Bangalore, but the strings is being pulled by someone out here in Kerala. It happens in many families. Basically, because the parents have not taught the children to be independent. So even after getting married, even after having grandchildren, the husband or the wife is still emotionally attached to the parents in such a way that it causes a lot of harm in the family. So teach your child to be independent so that tomorrow, when he gets married, he has a healthy detachment and also a healthy attachment with his parents. That's number 4. Number 5, handling conflicts and crisis creatively. If a conflict ഉണ്ടായിട്ടുണ്ട്, the mother and father is upset that Jesus did this to us. But how did Jesus handle this this conflict in a very nice manner. Though he was assertive, there was a sense of confrontation, but he was very clear as to why he stayed back in the church. And I believe this is something that we need to learn today. Handling conflicts and crisis creatively. So these are questions that I would want to ask you. Have you taught your children to handle crisis? Have you taught your children to handle crisis? Something happens. ഒരു challenge വന്നാൽ ലൈഫിൽ ഒരു പ്രയാസം വന്നാൽ how to face it. Does the children know? Does the children know? Simple thing. Very simple things. It's very important. പള്ളിയിൽ പോയി തന്നെ വീട്ടിലോട്ട് വരാൻ പറ്റുമോ? I'm not talking of places that are very far. If they go to school, they want to buy some things. Are they taught? If something happens, how are they supposed to respond? Or will they just freeze? Will they just freeze? Right? So it's I believe it's very important to teach our children to handle crisis. Let's not be very protective and very possessive. The Malayali parents are normally, most of us, right? We tend to be sometimes very protective and very possessive. We won't allow them to go out to play, right? Don't want to go in the sun, don't go out in the rain, don't go out in the winter, right? Don't mix with this friend, don't mix with that friend, right? So many do's and the don'ts. So everything is, it is as if the father and the mother creates a way for the child to walk. Don't create a way. Teach them how to walk in the path of life rather than creating the way for them. Hence, teach the children to handle crisis. Two, the children learns to handle crisis or conflicts by the way parents have conflict among themselves. It's normal that parents have conflicts. It's normal. It's normal. But when we have conflicts in the family, I would say these 5 things, right? These 5 things. Number one, whenever you have a conflict, respect the person. Do not devalue the person, right? This normally happens, right? I'm not trying to be generalized when the spouses have an argument, they literally pull each other down. They literally pull each other down. And if the wife knows what you call as certain areas that the husband would get upset very fast, she will hit there, right? Hitting below the belt in argument just to win. The wife will just do that, or the husband would just do that to make her feel bad and hurt. Respect your partner when you have a difference of opinion. Respect your partner when you are arguing. Two, do not raise your voice, the tone of voice. It's normal for us to talk loudly, shout, scream, right? Along with respect, talk in tones that are nice and humble. You're expressing a difference of opinion. And somebody has rightly said half of our conflicts would be solved by the way we talk to the other person, the tone of voice. Three, listen. When you have an when you have an argument and you want to have a counter argument, please listen first to what the other person says. Don't cut him off. Don't cut her off. Listen and have rational argument. ഈ ചിലരോട് ആർഗ്യൂ ചെയ്താൽ നമുക്ക് അങ്ങ് ദേഷ്യം വരും. Why are you late? So the answer would be that I didn't get the bus or the train was late. Why are you late? Oh, I didn't get the milk. നീ എന്തിനാണ് താമസിച്ചത്? ഓ, പാല് കിട്ടിയില്ല. ഓക്കെ, പാലെന്താ കിട്ടാഞ്ഞത്? ഓ, തേങ്ങയ്ക്ക് ഇപ്പൊ ഭയങ്കര വിലയാ. തേങ്ങക്ക് എന്തോന്നാണ് വില ആയത്? ഓ, പൊട്ടറ്റോ ഇപ്പോൾ മാർക്കറ്റിൽ ഇല്ല. This is the conversation that happens. It doesn't have heads or tails. It goes in some wayward direction. Four, the language that you use. അയ്യോ, ഈ മാർത്തമക്കാരോട് ചിലരോട് ചോദിച്ചാൽ ഈ അന്യഭാഷ വരമുണ്ടോ എന്ന് ചോദിച്ചാൽ എല്ലാരും പറയും ഇല്ലെന്ന് പറയും. പക്ഷെ വഴക്കുണ്ടാക്കുന്ന സമയത്ത് അന്യഭാഷ വരം എല്ലാരും ഉപയോഗിക്കും. ബ്യൂട്ടിഫുൾ, അറിയോ? അന്യഭാഷ വരമേ ഇല്ല പലർക്കും. പക്ഷെ അടിയുണ്ടാക്കുന്ന സമയത്ത് the kind of vocabulary, kind of language that they use is something really, right? I believe be very careful at the language that you use. But whenever you have a conflict, remember, go what is best for the family. Whenever there's an argument, remember, nobody wins in an argument, especially if it's in a family. There are only losers when you fight in the family. Don't lose the family. So go for the best in the family. And finally, I would say, is there a personal space for each member of the family? Is there a personal space? Does the wife have a personal space? Does the husband have a personal space? Does the kids have a personal space so that they can enjoy their creative aspects, desires? അങ്ങനെ ഒരു പേഴ്സണൽ സ്പേസ് ദ പാഷൻസ് ദാറ്റ് ദേ വുഡ് വാണ്ട് ടു ഗോ അലോങ് വിത്ത് അങ്ങനെയൊക്കെ ഒരു പാഷൻസ് ഉണ്ടെങ്കിൽ ഇറ്റ്സ് വെരി നൈസ്. ഐ ബിലീവ് ആ പേഴ്സണൽ സ്പേസിനെ കുറിച്ച് പഠിക്കുന്ന സമയത്ത് ഐ മീൻ ഐ തിങ്ക് യു നീഡ് ടു ടോക്ക് ടു നൈനു അച്ഛൻ. I think they are a family who have a very beautiful personal space. They have the passion for singing, right? Love for animals, love for music, lot of things, which actually brings a lot of harmony in the family. When each person has their own space which helps them to nurture their soul, it really is something good. So I often say, look at your parish priest. You will get a lot of inspiration as to how you can have a personal space in the family, pursuing your passions, your interest, and that sustains your family as a whole. And these are something that some of the mistakes parents make when you discipline, blaming each other for children's behavior. Up and normally അമ്മയോടാ പറയും നീ കാരണം ഈ കൊച്ചിങ്ങനെ ആയത്, right? Shaming, criticizing, lecturing the children. യോ നിന്നെ പോലെ ഒരാൾ എനിക്ക് കിട്ടിയല്ലോ, you literally shame. Relying too heavily on punishments, അടിച്ചാൽ just giving good pasting. It doesn't make any difference. Dictating rules without discussions, no discussions. Because the children can't have an opinion. And 5, impulsive and disrespectful behaviors. Impulsive. അടിക്കാൻ പോകുന്ന സമയത്ത് കയ്യിൽ ചെരുപ്പാണെങ്കിൽ ചെരുപ്പിട്ടടിക്കും, കയ്യിൽ ചട്ടകമാണെങ്കിൽ ചട്ടകം എടുത്തടിക്കും. Impulsive behaviors. Please do not do this. Okay. And last, number 6 is discerning God's plan and purpose for your children. My time is almost up. I said I'll stop at 8:10. I'll use about 3 or 4 minutes and then I'll stop it. Right? So and then Jesus Christ says this, don't you know I should be in my Father's house? And what is he trying to communicate to his parents? That God has a plan for me. Mom, don't worry. Here is the young boy, Jesus Christ, telling his parents, Amma, don't worry. This is what I'm supposed to do, or this is what God's plan in my life is. Right? So I believe it's what Jesus Christ is teaching us. That every child has a purpose with regards to God. Right? And how do you know that? So the first thing that we can do, please do not compare your children. They are different. Even your own children. Because God's plans for each one of them are different. Jeremiah chapter 1 verse 5, even when you were in your mother's womb, I knew you. What a powerful verse that we learned from Jeremiah. God has a plan for each and every child. They are different. They are unique. So do not compare your children with your own children, also with somebody else. So I would say pray to see God's plan in the life of the children. God will reveal what his plans are there for your child. And then finally, I believe each child has a specific plan according to God. Don't worry about it. I think we all get too much worried as to what a child would go to. I've been working with children for the last so many years, especially with regards to academics. And I always tell parents, don't worry. If your children have not scored well in academics, there are certain areas that they will excel. Some children will score very good in academics. That is their fault. That is their fault. But God doesn't look at the quality of your academics. Yes, it is a part, an integral part of it. But we are differently able. That's what I try to say. We are differently able. Right? So number 6 is to discern God's plan and purpose for your children. So don't compare your children. Pray so that you could see God's plan in the life of the children. And I believe each child has a specific plan according to God. And I believe these are 6 things which I feel that we could adopt in a family. I'll just revise it again and conclude this session. Number 1, I said, have rituals in the family. I talked about rituals both as worship in church and in home. The fellowship meals both in the church and in the home, and how you can communicate meaningfully in the family. 2, I said, be a part of life experience of your children. Get into their world rather than bringing them into our world. Understand what they go through. Right? 3, I believe, Help your child to be connected to good models in life so that they good value system. And home is also a place where they get good values. For making your child independent and responsible so that they are able to be more confident, assertive, and take their own life's decision and be responsible for it. Number five is that teaching them to handle conflicts and crises creatively. And lastly, I would say is to understand that each of our child has a plan according to God, a specific plan that God has for it. Let's trust in the Lord. Let's trust that God will show that plan to us. And that's how I believe we can engage our children in the troubled times, which we call our children as a troubled ages. May God bless you with his words. And I'm sorry I took about 2, 3 minutes.